I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. Today, no war has been declared, and however fierce the struggle may be, it may never be declared in the traditional fashion. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger, and yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent.
The whole setup of the Vatican is designed to pay homage to Babylon.
Antichristo! The New World Order will fail!
Why do you think they keep constantly mirroring and copying and inverting these things? Because it's a religion that is actually at its very heart with the Jesuit conspiracies and secret societies. They're trying to break the veil and bring through the Antichrist.
Is actually a temple of the Antichrist.
first Jesuit pope comes to a Jesuit general congregation.
One of the biggest lies of this whole masquerade is that this is built on St. Peter. That's one of the hinges that it stands on. When in actual fact, there's a lot to say that Peter himself wasn't in Rome, and that this is actually a Gnostic religion. And I'm not saying there's not true believing people who are in the Catholic Church that truly believe in the gospel of Christ have been misled, but I'm saying come out of her, my people, because this is a masquerade that is leading to the great deception, and that's the danger of it.
We can also agree on the need to stand up to anti-Catholic bias.
They're trying to break the veil and bring through the Antichrist.
'Cause I feel blinded, blinded by you.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The Rothschild family name is synonymous with conspiracy theories, global banking, and many other things, but it's most synonymous with old money. During the Gilded Age, the family held the world's largest private fortune. They were among just a handful of families accepted into both European and American aristocracies. No family was more powerful or wealthy than the Rothschilds, even though they were a non-royal dynasty without physical power. Many Rothschild family members were lords, and they had an unusually grand coat of arms. With all this in mind, you might be shocked by how humble the beginnings of this dynasty were. A series of wise and decisive steps were taken to build their financial empire and forge their political influence. Rothschild is a German name meaning red shield. Like many poor medieval families, they at first had no surname, so they chose Rothschild simply because a red sign was above the door of their house. They weren't an important or even really an interesting family until the 1700s, when Meyer Rothschild came to prominence. As a Jew, he was only allowed to live in certain areas, known as ghettos, but this gave Meyer the chance to become a court Jew, a type of banker only Jews could be, as the Bible doesn't allow charging interest on borrowed money. As Jews had no need to obey the Bible, monarchs would hire court Jews to do this for them. Meyer's father was a silk and coin trader who dealt with Prince Wilhelm of Hesse. Through this connection, Meyer became banker to one of Europe's most wealthy men. Meyer himself became fabulously wealthy and respected by powerful people. This paid off during the French Revolution when he helped fund the Austrian army. This was when he realized there was more money in lending to royalty than to civilian business people. He taught this lesson to his children, as he knew the family's success would depend on their actions. He sent each of his 5 sons to the most wealthy kingdoms in Europe, where they established their own banking businesses. In time they grew, and the Rothschild family held influence in Frankfurt, Vienna, Paris, London, and Naples. He taught them exactly how to succeed in business and to gain influence with politicians. He also taught them that knowledge is power. After his death, they built Europe's most efficient courier system so they would hear important news before anyone else. To make sure their communications could not be intercepted, they wrote to each other in secret code. They knew things other people didn't, and they used that knowledge to manipulate the markets. It was like the original insider trading. And on that note, something else they did to protect the family fortune was an astounding amount of incest. This tragically kept the family close as they built their financial empires in each country. They really flourished during the Napoleonic era, lending the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars to the enemies of Napoleon. Funding war efforts, they gained the favor of monarchs, making large fortunes and being awarded titles. In 1843, Salomon Rothschild became the first ever Jew to be awarded honorary Austrian citizenship. 20 years before that, he was made a lord and therefore accepted into the nobility. The Rothschilds were accepted into the nobility of other European countries also. They had a specific strategy to infiltrate high society. Part of it was to marry members of other noble families. Another part was to diversify their business interest, so they used their banking profits to invest in all kinds of finance as well as transport and mining. Through this, they gained influence over resources governments needed and services their populations relied on. As European economies rapidly grew during this time, their wealth skyrocketed, and with that, their power. The Rothschilds funded many of the largest government projects across Europe. They essentially bankrolled Europe, not entirely by themselves, but more than any other family or institution. It's easy to see where the conspiracy theories come from, as those who have the most financial power in a country will always have disproportionate influence. As was allegedly said by Meyer Rothschild, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws." Even if he didn't say it, the family clearly held massive influence over politicians. They funded Cecil Rhodes, who built a monopoly on diamond mining in South Africa. By the mid-19th century, the family held the largest private fortune in modern history. They were not expected to kiss the Pope's feet when meeting him, but kings and emperors were expected to. Going into the 20th century, they were absurdly wealthy. Being the largest shareholder in De Beers, they had acquired ownership or part ownership of asset-dependent industries, which they knew would keep providing income. Mining, oil production, rail transport, real estate, things like that. Many of those businesses still make them money today. They also remain a key component of the international banking system. Their largest holding company alone has assets worth over $60 billion. The net worth of the family is estimated to be at least $350 billion, with higher estimates over $1 trillion. They remain an incredibly wealthy dynasty, and they got there through investing in assets that will continually give an income, through decisive networking making themselves needed by powerful allies, and through centuries of inbreeding. We don't know how much power they hold today, but there was a time when the family bailed out the Bank of England, and as one German economist once said, there is but one power in Europe and that is Rothschild.
Actually, I had quite an illustrious career, 27 and a half years in the FBI. And in those 27 and a half years, I had 13 assignments, so I moved around the country. The only part of the country I never did live in was really the extreme northeast U.S. So also during my career, I handled just about everything. I was counter-espionage, counter-terrorism in New York and Connecticut, and I negotiated with some skyjackers at Philadelphia International Airport for 2.5 hours, July the 12th, 1972. And I ended up being in charge of most of Southern California. Had over 700 personnel under my command. Long story short, I developed 19 new witnesses, including a signed confession from Helena Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat on the street corner, 4:30 in the morning, observed by MP Micah en route to the crime scene. This case is, other than the O.J. Simpson case, I'd say has probably had more publicity, not in recent years, but in the past than any other case in the history of our country in the way of a criminal matter. In my confession, which I obtained on October 25, 1980, Helena Stokely told me that Dr. McDonald did not commit those murders. Now, I'm going to give you some details here, and I'm going to move into some other areas because I'm talking about corruption personified, okay? Helena said he did not commit those murders. They were committed by her satanic cult group. She said that her satanic cult was involved in distributing drugs up and down the East Coast. Drugs were being flown in plastic bags in the body cavities of the dead GIs coming into the air bases around the country. This is in Time magazine, January 1, 1973. You want documentation, I'll give it to you. And she said that they went in on their own, committed the murders. They were mad at McDonald, Dr. McDonald, because when their associates and friends would go to the civilian hospital where he was moonlighting, he was actually a doctor at the military hospital, he was being abusive to the ODs, those who were on overdose of drugs and so forth, and so they went in to rough him up a little bit. It got out of hand, and it was a horrible thing. Colette, the wife, was pregnant. The two children, 2.5 and 5.5, were brutally stabbed numerous times, over 100 stab wounds in the 3 bodies. But Helena said that when the higher-ups in the drug operation, who were government personnel, police officers, 2 attorneys in Fayetteville, North Carolina, generals, not singular, generals, top brass military officers, when they learned that this cult, this satanic cult, had committed these murders, they knew that if there was an investigation of the cult, it would expose the whole operation throughout America. And so what did they do? They covered it up. And I submitted a 1,200-page report to Judge Webster, who was my boss at one time. I was one of the top executives in the Bureau. And the judge knew me personally. In fact, he told Louis L'Amour, a Western writer, who was a friend of mine, according to Louis, that I was probably one of the best all-around agents in the history of the organization. That's what Louis L'Amour told me. But I knew Judge Webster. I knew him well, worked with him, in contact with him personally. And I submitted this 1,200-page report to him with a personal letter. Judge, I think this man's innocent. The FBI needs to look at my report and continue with my investigation. He's run out of money. Instead of a response from the FBI, I didn't even receive an acknowledgement, by the way. Next thing I hear, I'm receiving phone calls from around the country. I'm a homosexual, suffering from mental problems, disgruntled ex-employee, was forced out of the FBI because I was a practicing Satanist, an informant for the FBI, an informant for the CIA, and it goes on and on and on. There's one person in particular right now who's spreading these rumors quite vociferously and quite rapidly, and unfortunately there's a few people who do believe, but I just keep going forward. It's not a problem for me. So I was ignored, and I was amazed and astounded in reviewing the testimony. 2 FBI agents lied on the witness stand. Paul Stombaugh, for one, and another gentleman, I say gentleman, another Fred Whitehurst, who was the good guy, who tried to expose corruption within the FBI laboratory, has been kicked out and pressured out of the Bureau. Another FBI agent lied. That's come out in laboratory reports recently. And so I was, in my day, we had a great organization, not because of me, but because of a lot of good, solid, great Americans. As a matter of fact, when Mr. Hoover died, which was May of 1972, he'd been in 40 years, director. You know what he had on those congressmen, senators, don't you? We didn't have the corruption then that we do now, I'm convinced, because Hoover knew. He knew, he had the evidence. And that's another point. I'm not going to get into that. But Congress voted that there would never be another J. Edgar Hoover. He had too much power. And he may have had too much power. So they limited the term of a director to 10 years. They also voted mandatory retirement at age 55. So what does that mean? They got rid of all the, quote, Hooverites, all the good guys, as far as I'm concerned. And look what's happened in the last 23 years. A disgrace. I personally investigated the Oklahoma City bombing case. Huge cover-up. Jack Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. Bobby Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay. Terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties. The Bilderbergs. The Illuminati, Bilderberg, New World Order, globalists are the element behind this. It dovetails into the satanic movement, and this movement has infiltrated into our intelligence community, the once great FBI and the CIA. I have, in the past, had personal contact with an individual who was head of the CIA hit squad. He had over 3,000 individuals around the world he could call upon to go out and kill somebody. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay. Terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties. The Illuminati, Bilderberg, New World Order, globalists are the element behind this. It dovetails into the satanic movement, and this movement has infiltrated into our intelligence community, the once great FBI and the CIA. Into the satanic movement, into the satanic movement, into the satanic movement, into the satanic movement, and this movement has infiltrated into our intelligence community, the once great FBI and the CIA.
This is a world pandemic. It's a 1 in 100 year event. So you can expect that we will have transmission from time to time, and that's just the way it is. We've got to accept that this is the new world order. We've got to accept that this is the new world order. The new world order. The new world order. The new world order.
Into the satanic movement, into the satanic movement, into the satanic movement.
We've got to accept that this is the new world order. We've got to accept that this is the new world order. The new world order. The new world order. The new world order.